What's up? So, we are going to be doing this whole mystery pack thing. I teased earlier in a video about this pack of comics for $2. So we know it has a Savage Dragon in it. So it could have Image Comics in it. We know it has this copy of Saber from Eclipse Comics. Yeah, what up, Roscoe? So, yeah, we don't know what's in here. But we've got some scissors and we're going to find out. Again, there's like a bunch of stuff in there. I'm excited. If you saw the video earlier, I made, I'd already opened it, but it was like Disney comics, which are pretty cool. So that was exciting because I like Disney and I like comics and I like Disney comics. So now we've got this. And I have no idea. I mean, it could be anything because like this is issue 82 of Savage Dragon. So it's not exactly like one of the earliest issues. So the stuff that's in here, and then this is an Eclipse comic from like the 80s. So it could be really anything, you know, in here. I mean, we could even have more Disney comics, right? I mean, that's hypothetically speaking. That's what we could have. So I'm just going to open this up real quick. I'm not going to look at any of them without you guys. But I can't hold the camera and... No, it's just my phone. And cut this open at the same time. So I'm just cutting the side now. I could have done this at my desk. But I don't know, it just seemed easier to do it on my phone. Alright. I'm not looking at any of them. I'm just taking the stack out of the paper. Alright, so we know that there's an issue of Saber. We know that. Ooh, what is this? Boom. Another issue of Saber. So we've got issue number something, number 6, and number 3. I don't know anything about Saber, but I do like these old 80s comics that aren't DC and Marvel because the art's a little bit different, and it gives me a chance to see something on quality paper. Because the paper for Disney, for Marvel and DC comics in the 80s was garbage. They printed on really cheap paper, but this independent stuff, the paper quality was usually way better, so these comics have held up. Here's what we're going to do. I think pretty much all the comics are facing the other way, so we're going to go through so we don't have to turn them all around. There's Savage Dragon, number 82. Oh, Savage Dragon, number 83 with Mike Allred's Madman. That's pretty cool. I wonder if Allred drew the character in the book, or if Erik Larsen did. Let's see. What does it say? What does it mention? That'd be cool to look through, though. Looks like probably, yeah, that's Erik Larsen art there. Which, I know, I mean, Madman's not that interesting of a character to me outside of Mike Allred's art, so it'll be interesting to look through that. So it looks like there's going to be a lot of Savage Dragon in here. Hopefully not all Savage Dragon, but that's 84. So we've got 82 to 84 so far. Hopefully that's a whole little storyline. That'd be cool. And of course 85. So hopefully that's that's the whole thing. Here we've got Snake Eyes Declassified. I don't know anything about G.I. Joe comic books. I don't even know when this is from. (2005). Do you know anything about G.I. Joe comics, Roscoe? Looks like we got a couple of these. Let's see. So number 2, number 3. Hopefully you have number 4, number 1, right? Number 4, number 5. These are cool covers. This one I don't like as much. This one looks like, I don't know. I don't like that style. But this one's cool. Storm Shadow, Snake Eyes. G.I. Joe seems enjoyable, but I've never read them, so I feel like I'm too behind to jump in. Yeah, that's the problem with comics in general, isn't it? I mean, serialized comics. I mean, they've probably rebooted it by now. I mean, it's not the same continuity as the 80s, I'm sure. These pages are interesting. Just 2 panels per page, and then stuff on the side. That's weird. Snake Eyes Declassified. Snake Eyes is like the most popular character, and it was really just a way for them to be lazy, from what I understand. So they wanted a character that they didn't have to paint and spend money on, so they made Snake Eyes. So the Malibu comics. What's Packins Land's vibes? Explain yourself. Eric Hawkins has nearly a complete run of Marvel G.I. Joe. That's pretty impressive. That's pretty impressive. So you're the expert then in these G.I. Joe comics. Have you read this? Probably not. Ooh, that's a cool image of Storm Shadow and Snake Eyes. What's up, Arlene? That's a pretty cool 2-page spread. When you have characters that are like that, where they're rivals but very similar, that's a good idea. I'm excited to look through this stuff. So I don't know anything about Malibu Comics really, other than that Aaron Lopresti worked for him. He made Sludge. There's like Lord Pumpkin too, which is a really good design, but from what I understand didn't have that many stories behind him. So this is 90s art, man. Going back, like, I just don't. Some of it's fun, but for the most part, I just don't think it's very good. This is cool though. I like this. It's like a Deadlands vibe almost, but that's cool. Eric Hawkins says, I haven't read much other than the Marvel, but lots of the Declassified you are looking through looks like a retelling of Snake Eyes' story. Yeah. Sort of like his origin or something. Cool. There's all this stuff to learn, even from art you don't like. Like, even though I'm not the biggest fan of this, like, I don't like his face, not a fan of his faces. I do like this idea here, this showing the shadow and everything. It'll be interesting to go through some of this stuff. It's one of the reasons I like to get these old books, is just to look through the art and learn from it. Either learn what to do or what not to do. See, Lord Pumpkin, just like I was talking about. Man, he's such a great design and character. Good old Lord Pumpkin. Featuring Marvel's Loki. Eric Hawkins even has the Snake Eyes tattoo on your forearm. That's pretty epic. I had Snake Eyes as a kid. I had the big Joes from the early 90s. That's what I had. So here we've got another issue of Saber, issue number 4. It'll be interesting to look through these. These 80s boom, usually they talk about the black and white boom, but oh, that's cool stuff. Who drew this? Billy Graham? What? Billy Graham? No way. Here we've got ElfQuest. $1983, so that's before the boom, like, it's like 84 and 85. Like, what year did the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles come out? I think like 85. Oh, here we've got an image book. Savant Guard. I have never heard of that. Anybody heard of that? It's like late 90s image. See if we had a date. How much would you bet you can't? Oh, Wildstorm. Oh, yeah, so definitely. If it's a Wildstorm book, then it's definitely still in the 90s. Pretty cool. Let's see. Who drew it? Looks like maybe J. Scott King. No, Ryan Adagawa. Sort of that Wildstorm style, though. It's like Jim Lee and some other people mixed together. Reminds me of Gen 13. I love curly hair a lot, so I'm always looking, see how people, just hair in general I like to look at and see how people do it, but curly hair especially is neat to see how people draw it. Eric Hawkins says, wow, I've never heard of that book, but I think Savant might be Zealot. That might have been Zealot's sister. Okay. I've heard of Zealot. Man, remember when 90s sports, like with Upper Deck and Tops and Fleer cards, man. And there's Alex Rodriguez and I'm not sure who that is, that Yankee is. Gary Sheffield, maybe? I don't know. I don't know who it is. But that's definitely Alec A-Rod when he was on the Seattle Mariners. Then he went to the Rangers, I guess, after that, and then to the Yankees. Let's see, here's the years. 97, yeah. You can kind of tell, like, early image has a look, and then that, like, as the decade went on in the 90s, I just feel like image just got worse and worse until, like, they went away from the superhero comics and just became, like, the indie location they are now for other people. That's just my opinion, though. Oh, here we got a CrossGen. There's a successful company. Sigil. That's interesting. Use of digital color. I've been thinking a lot about, like, just color in general, and if we're actually any better off with digital coloring, because I mean, was this bad? Like, did this need to be changed? And I especially don't like when they recolor old books. Like, basically, I don't think you can buy Sandman without it having been recolored. So you can't buy what, like in a collection at least, Sandman like it originally came out. But I don't know, this is like comic books to me. This is what I think of, is just the simple color palette, you know. When someone's hair is black, it's got blue in it. It's not shaded. But you can't, like, when they go back and recolor this stuff, it looks so terrible with modern color. And I don't know if it's just people not coloring things right, or if it's just the style that people drew in. They weren't anticipating the coloring, but especially the old style, old guys, you know. Like, if you ever seen Jack Kirby colored and digital, it looks terrible. Eric Hawkins, Divine Right, The Adventures of Max Faraday was one of my favorite Jim Lee image books. I'll have to look that up, man. I'm not familiar with that. Roscoe, I like what I call blue hair comics. Yeah, man, like Wonder Woman with blue hair. Right? She's not a blue hair, but she has that, like, curly hair, and then it's just got that blue streaks through it. I like that. So, Sigil. I don't know. I barely know anything about CrossGen, other than they were all the books were linked, and they, like, had this grand plan that didn't work out. I've seen some of the stuff, and it looks interesting. Like, more fantastical, which is cool. Like, it was trying to be different, but Green Lantern or something? Look at that. I don't know. Dude, Chuck Dixon. That's cool. Meridian. I like fantasy stuff, so like when I see images like this, I get kind of excited about it. These old comics have a great smell to them. You sure do, man. So I've heard of like Mystic, and I've heard of Scion. I haven't heard any of these other CrossGen comics. But I wasn't really, like, at this point, I mean, what year was this? When? It was like early 2000s, right? When CrossGen stuff was coming out? Let's see. Yeah, 2002, I wasn't reading comics. I wasn't buying comics on my own yet. And this wasn't in the pop culture as much as, like, Valiant comics in the 90s, or, especially, you know, obviously DC or Marvel. But by that point, I was just not. It's a whole period of comics I've missed. Roscoe says, I just got several sets of comics off of eBay this week. Haven't had a chance to read them yet. Yeah, I don't know when I will get to reading any of these, but I like to buy them nonetheless because I like to look at the art and get inspired. So Coyotes, this looks newer. This is an image book. Obviously newer. Let's see. 2018. Probably the newest. That's definitely the newest single issue comic I own right there. 2018. Other than something I've, you know, an indie book I've backed or something. Arlene says, I always liked the way the old comics were colored, but I grew up with it. Yeah, I mean, I think anybody who that's when they got started was with this old stuff. I prefer it because that's the comics I read growing up. But then the digital coloring started, and it's not bad. We've gotten to the point now where it looks really good, but I think people should, I don't think everybody should abandon it, the old style. Every once in a while, throw us a bone and give us something classic to look at. So we have Captain Atom Armageddon, a Wildstorm book. 1 of 9, so don't think we're going to get this whole story in here. Interesting. So Jim Lee drew this cover. A crossover between Captain Atom, Batman here. What's this dude's name, Eric? He's one of the Wildcats guys. What's his name? Superman in the background. Roscoe says, I just saw a Pirates Comics campaign on Indiegogo that had real classic art and color, considering backing. Cool. Yeah, Spartan. And Mr. Majestic behind him. Yeah, Spartan. So, I probably need to pick up some of the old Wildcat stuff just to look at Jim Lee's art, like, when he was at the top of his game. Because I really like Jim Lee, like Probably a decade ago, I was all about Jim Lee, and that's who I wanted to be, right? In terms of my artistic endeavors. And then now I realize, like, I'm never going to draw like him, and I just don't like trying to draw like him. Like, I much prefer a nice thick line. And he and Scott Williams, the inker, just... I don't think I can ever draw like that. It'd be interesting to see somebody like with a different inking style ink Jim Lee and see how his stuff looked. Because he's been inked by Williams so much. Count Duckula. Some cool looking stuff in here. Alright, what do we got here? Icon. Matt Fraction. That's a writer I've heard of. Gabriel Baugh. I like this cover. Different looking art. Kind of Mignola-esque. Not completely, but just that like gothic style. Lots of shadows and stuff. Who's the guy that worked on 100 Bullets with Azzarello? It reminds me of him too. More stylized. Oh, Gabriel Baugh does Umbrella Academy. Okay. Really cool. Yeah, it's like a mixture of some different... I mean, if you're comparing it to other people. Like, it's this dude's style, obviously. But... definitely reminds me of like Mignola, and then somewhat of the guy that worked on 100 Bullets, whose name escapes me right now. Cool, I'm excited to look through this. I always like seeing... that's the same image from before, I think. I always like looking at how people use shadow. Like, especially this one, like that... that's like some Mignola looking... it has feet though, so it can't be Mignola. Cool. Alright. Oh, a Gilbert Hernandez book. Dark Horse. 1 of 6. So if you don't know the Hernandez brothers, Love and Rockets, they've been long time indie comics guys. And they're really influenced by a Dennis the Menace comic book, which I hope appears in my hand soon, and I'll show it off. It should be, you know, I'm going to like use my mind powers to get it from my office, like right inside the door on a chair, and hopefully it zooms to me. I'm like going to put out my hand. I'll just put it over here so you can't see it. But I like looking at the black and white art. The one thing I really hope that Doug TenNapel does is put out his comics in both black and white and color, because I love looking at his stuff in black and white. This is more what I enjoy, this cartoonist looking, nice thick lines. Yeah, Roscoe, I hope more people do black and white stuff. Like it just add something. That'll be interesting. There's another one. So this looks like a little kind of creepy, right? But. And then we have, of course, Saber. So that's what we got. An interesting mix. Cross-gen, some newer comics, and then we've got like Dark Horse comics from Gilbert Hernandez, 2007. And then we've got Saber, which, you know, with this amount of Saber, I might actually get Alright, so I'm going to try again for that book and see if my mind powers work. Well, it worked! Here it is. Dennis the Menace in Hawaii. So the Hernandez brothers were actually really influenced by this. Alright, Roscoe, see ya. This is not by... So this is, Dennis the Menace obviously started out as a newspaper comic strip by Hank Ketchum. But the comic books were drawn by somebody else. Al Wiseman was probably the best of the comic book guys that worked on, from what the people say, right? Hernandez brothers say. And this is one of the biggest selling comic books of all time, right here. Dennis the Menace. Let's see, I don't know if it says... I mean, obviously the back says one of the most delightful and best-selling comic books of all time, but I don't remember the actual numbers. But this was a huge selling comic and really popular. And the cartooning in it is really, really cool. So if you want to, I mean, this is available on like Amazon if you're interested, but I mean, look at this shot. Really cool, really dynamic. And you think, for a Dennis the Menace book, is it necessary to have these really amazing images? But why not? I mean, if you take pride in your work. So basically, you look at this image of the stewardess here, and then you look at these images, you can see some of the similarities in the lines and stuff. But I'm looking at like this type of comic. The one's meant for kids, right? From the 50s, 60s, some even from the 70s, and the 90s, of course, 80s and 90s. But I've been looking at these and I've been trying to glean as much as I can from this simple style. Not highly rendered. Doesn't need to be. You can see like this guy, he puts blacks when he needs them. Spots blacks. Some really, really cool stuff, man. And then this edition has a bunch of extras in it, like information about the book and the trip that they went on to Hawaii before they made this. That's really cool. So that was in the original one. They wanted you to color it. This was a special edition comic when they put it out. It was really a lot longer than most of the comics would have been. And here's information about the trip they took. Learning to hula. Interviews and stuff. Pretty neat. I was glad when I heard about this book and the influence it had. So this is actually one of the most like influential comic books in terms of art, and you don't even know because it's two people removed, right? So like we're influenced by these people from the 80s and 90s, and they were influenced by this stuff. Pretty neat. So, which of these comics did you guys think looked the coolest that we looked at? We've got Saber, we've got Gilbert Hernandez stuff. Whatever this is, Casanova, Luxuria 1. I don't even know the title of this. This is a really busy cover. I like this image here. We've got Wildstorm stuff. We've got whatever this is. CrossGen, Image, and just a wide variety. I wish I'd gotten the... So we just don't have issue 1 of this. No, I guess maybe it doesn't... I guess it's not a mini-series, so like this probably goes beyond 6, but we don't have issue 1. So that's fun. Don't know where the story starts on that one. And then I haven't really read much Savage Dragon. I'm not the hugest Erik Larsen art fan. I see the appeal that he must have had at the time, and at least it looks different than a lot of the 90s, late 80s / early 90s guys. He was more of a cartoonist than some people. And I think people need to go back and look at Todd McFarlane's art too, because he's really a cartoonist, I think, versus someone like Jim Lee, whose art doesn't really come off as cartoony at all. Look at those early Spawn issues, and you'll see what I'm talking about. So hopefully that's the whole story featuring Madman and these other individuals in this crossover with Savage Dragon. And we can read the whole thing, and then I'll come back and talk about it. Maybe. So if you know anything about any of these, leave a comment. If you want me to read these and get back to you on what I thought about them, then also leave a comment. Yeah, but this was $2, so we got what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 bucks. That's 10 cents each that we spent on this stuff. So that's not bad for a grab bag. A lot of cool cartooning stuff for me to look at and study, even if I'm not into the subject matter or the story. Like, look at that. All right, there's a lot to learn from this stuff, for sure. Even if it's not my usual game. Pretty neat. All right, guys. We've had our fun. What do we do now, right? Do I just peace out? I don't know. Probably should. Thank you for watching. Adios. How do I end this? Finish.